I went out and rebooted, and hopefully you all can hear me. I'm not just flapping my lips in the wind. Gotta wait for someone to show up to tell me. It is January 3rd, and I'm trying to live stream on the YouTube app. I noticed something strange. They have games you can play, supposedly. I'm not going to try it now because we're having issues with the sound. And I'm waiting for. There were people watching me and typing in the chat that there was no sound. Let me get the chat back up. And so I shut down and come back. Okay, if you're here, hello. Carrie, welcome. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, good, you can hear me. I don't know if you were watching a few minutes ago, but I tried to stream and I couldn't get the audio on. I don't know why. So I did what you have to do. I shut my whole thing down and turned it back on. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do that in our daily life? We're supposed to. Every New Year's, we're supposed to reboot with new resolutions. I had kind of, I wouldn't say it was a resolution, but I was moving to, oh, the noise, I apologize. There's some kind of malware in my computer that I can't get rid of, and it sends notifications, and I don't know where they come from, so I don't know how to block them. And it makes this awful noise that sounds like it's crashing into a brick wall. But anyway, I had started to make a kind of resolution that I was going to clean up my channel because I have too many videos where I have been triggered by trolls. And I'm not going to get rid of those videos because, unfortunately, there's some weird individuals. Hi, Angel. Thank you for coming back. Um, I was anyway, my resolution that I'm going to take all those videos and put them in a playlist, unlisted, so that if somebody is looking for my answers to some really serious defamation and lies that are being told by a couple of, at least one person. I mean, she has friends who just repeat what she says. If she would stop, they would go find something else to do. But she's more than a little unhinged. And she makes everyone else, including me, more than a little unhinged ourselves. So, my plan for 2026 is simply to ignore her as much as possible, but when I feel that I have to answer something, because she's making some very serious, what sound like factual statements, like claiming that the police have been to my house to serve warrants, seriously crazy stuff like that, um, I have to say something because people believe her. If they don't know me and they do know her, they have no reason not to believe her unless they know her well enough to know she's a liar. So anyway, the point is this. I am going to stick to the resolution of cleaning up my channel so that I can focus on what I want to focus on, which is some quilt and other creative. In fact, we're getting very serious with some great creative work here in my neighborhood. And I want to focus on that, not on YouTube trollery. So, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to sneeze is what I'm going to do. Anyway, I'm going to mention something that rhymes with stitchery and starts with a B in my title when I'm talking about stuff. But I'm not going to put most of my lives in unlisted playlists because I'm not going to talk about what I just talked about. But sometimes, things happen in the world. We want to talk about them. We don't necessarily just want to do the latest quilt block. I mean, that's fun too, but after a while, you want to do a little bit of other stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. And one of the reasons is I am getting very serious with this new creative project that I'm on. I don't want to go into it too much here because I'm working on a series of tutorials. Who else is in chat? Let me see. The problem with YouTube is the chat doesn't stay visible. I have to keep pushing a button to catch up with it. And the button doesn't want to read my fingers because I'm having an arthritis flare-up. Oh, let me see if this works. There. Okay. Yeah, well, Angela, I'm doing some projects. First of all, I joined a Block of the Month club. And I've got to order the book that goes with it. And it's a book that I got a funny feeling it's got some problems because we were talking about it in one of the chat rooms, and the instructions were striking me like word salad. So I suspect it might be a book that was put together by an AI. Hopefully with a person trying to manage the AI. And in quilting, you don't really need instructions. If you can look at the picture of how the block goes together, that's enough. But it's designed to start people out on simple blocks. Yeah, garbage is right. Angela's saying that a lot of the AI stuff is garbage. What the problem is, the AI is programmed to be a bullshitter. Everyone knows somebody who can never say they don't know the answer to a question. And the same person that cannot admit he doesn't know the answer to the question is also the one who never really read a book from beginning to end, doesn't really watch the news, just catches the headlines. But as soon as you mention anything, he's right there with the whole story. And on top of it, the AIs, and they're all pretty much programmed the same way, they're also not only programmed deliberately to pretend they know stuff when they don't, and that means making stuff up, but also to watch your language for what you want to do or say, what you like, and pander to it. Feed your ego. Feed your whatever madness you're indulging. And everyone's also known someone like that. In fact, I had a friend who was telling me how much he respected me. I'd caught him in about 5 or 6 different lies. And every lie, was something that was designed to be the thing he thought I wanted to hear. And I got real mad at him. We had an argument. And he says, "But you don't understand. I respect you." And I said, "No, you don't respect me. You suck up to me." And because he does, because he thinks I'm going to do stuff for him. I'm not. Anyway, we all know people like that. And that's how they program the AI. And they even got into trouble where if you keep telling someone they're great when they're talking about something truly crazy and even dangerous, then they get these people who suddenly wake up in the morning thinking they're God. I'm going to check the chat again. The screen is not paying attention to my fingers. Yeah. The patterns are whack. Yeah. Okay, anyway. So I am going to be doing a series when the Block of the Month Club gets started. I'll be doing videos that go up with that and keep up with the other ladies. It's designed to start you on simple blocks and work you up through to where by the end of the whole year, it's going to go on for the year, you're doing complicated work. We'll see how far I get. The other one I'm already doing is, where did I put that? My dead Brain Dead Victorian series. That one is going to be finished pretty soon because I'm only doing 12 blocks. I figured out that I don't need 35 blocks for that quilt. I increased the size and I'm doing 12. And I'm already on block number 9, so that's going to be ended. So the other one that I'm starting up is really, I'm excited about it. Cathedral windows. Cathedral windows is, okay, wait a minute. This is the Brain Dead Victorian right here. See, a lot of embroidery on that one. So that's, the quilting is not complicated, but the embroidery is complicated. And this one, this is cathedral windows. And if you look at it, you can see that it's kind of sculpted. It's three-dimensional. And I figured out how to do it. I got all this done. I've got about 3 blocks of it done. It's going to be more than 12 blocks, though. That's going because those are small blocks. But just the same, I'm going to make the twin-size quilt in that. But if you look up cathedral windows, first of all, there are 2 or 3 people, videos, each telling you this is how you do it, and doing things completely opposite each other, and making it look very complicated, and it is. And I tried following a couple of them, and then all of a sudden I got the hang of it. It's one of those things that looks complicated, but it's like riding a bike. Nobody can really explain how to do it. You just have to do it until you suddenly realize, oh, this is how it works. And I hit that sweet spot. And so I'm going to do a whole series. And also, I'm preparing my marketing. I'm going to be selling my quilts. I'm going to have 12 market quilts that I'm going to sell. And also smaller things. And for some of the smaller things, I'm thinking about putting together kits. For one particular project involving the cathedral window, I'm thinking about putting together a kit for making a very small cathedral window project. And that will include tutorials. In fact, today, I'm so lucky that I was not live streaming. I don't want to say what happened, but I deleted that video right away. I was doing a tutorial on the cathedral window, and I had to do something, and I stood up and walked away from the camera. And yeah, it was not pretty. It was not a good situation. So I'm going to start over with that. So my stitchery videos are going to be about stitchery. And my live streams will hopefully include some talks and chats with my fellow quilters, because a lot of people joining the channel lately, subscribing to me in the past few days, most of them are coming out of the quilt chat rooms that I've been hanging around in. And that was really nice to see that happen. So that's why I want to be able to up my game in terms of YouTube stitch tubing or quilt tubing. I'm really excited about the cathedral windows things because it's one of those things, it's a classic design, and I've got to find out about the history of it. I've got to research that. I don't know the history of it. What country did it get started in? I suspect it probably has English British or American heritage because it just feels like that kind of design. But it is a window that's in the quilt. Um, it is a window. And when it's all put together, all of these places where I have the gold patch, and that's going to include these other, it's going to be covered with that. So it's like you're looking out an old colonial diamond pane, or it's like old English cottage window with the diamond-shaped window panes. That's what it looks like. And I realized, wait a minute, I could put a whole scene by changing what's in each one of those window panes so that you're going to be able to see the sky and the ground and the garden. And I started looking up designs that I could use that way. It's going to be great. I'm going to have a lot of fun with that. I'm probably going to make a lot of those. And so I'm excited. Yeah. But that's all my stitchery and bitchery for now. I don't know how other people are doing for the new year. We've got things happening out here that are really good. In cooking, December was the month in which I really learned a lot of new stuff, making cheese, making caramels, making candies. I shouldn't be making the candies, but you end up with all this buttermilk and whey from making the cheese and also making my own butter. And the whey makes high protein caramels because you replace the if you're going to do the wet sugar boiling thing to make caramel, you replace the water with whey and you get high protein caramels. So I'm doing that, and it tastes good too. But I'm being careful not to eat too much, and because it's high protein, actually, I don't find myself craving more sweets, because that's always the problem. You eat one sweet, and then you crave more. But this caramel doesn't do that to me. So I'm going to, I've got to replenish my hurricane savings account before hurricane season hits. It starts in about May. And I like to have a certain amount of money set aside in case we have to evacuate. My plan is to head out to a casino somewhere. So I want to have a round-trip bus ticket and enough money for a couple nights. And although casinos, I don't know, they probably don't. They used to have hotels you could stay in for cheap. I don't know if they still do. I've got to have enough money in my hurricane evacuation fund to pay for about a 3-day trip to a casino someplace outside of the strike zone that the hurricane is hitting, which might mean going inland westward to Kingsville out on the border, or eastward, although I wouldn't really go to Coushatta, which is it's on the Louisiana line, because hurricanes that hit the Corpus Christi area do have a strong tendency to head eastward and northward into Houston, and then, whoops, I'm doing this backwards, and then into Louisiana. So I wouldn't go to Coushatta. But that's my plan. And then, outside of replenishing my hurricane fund, I'm going to buy a cheese press because now that I actually am pretty good at making my own ricotta and cream cheese, um, there's only one step further that you have to take to turn the same cheese into cheddar, real cheddar cheese, or Parmesan, aged cheeses. I have to get a cheese press. And I also should get a cheese cave, which is like a wine. You can use one of those little wine refrigerators that'll hold like 6 bottles of wine. You can use that for your cheeses because they can be in the refrigerator just to eat them. But if you want to age them like a cheddar cheese, it has to be at 50 degrees, which is too warm for a refrigerator, but cooler than an air-conditioned room. So I probably will get one of those little wine refrigerators and call it my cheese cave. That's what I'm doing this year. Let me check chat. Oh, come on. Well, 4 people are here, so thank you. What I'm doing right now is the first step in the cathedral windows block, which is to create this little hem on 2 edges of the square. You start with a square like this. I bought a package of these 10-inch squares of all kinds of fabrics, just every pattern you can imagine, all in one package, 100 pieces. I think I paid about $15 or $16 for it a few months ago. And that's what I'm using for my cathedral windows. And I'm thinking that the kit that I can do for making it's just going to be for one block that you can then use in different ways. You can turn it into something you can put a hot dish on, or you can make it fold over like a little wallet or something like that. And I don't think it'll cost me much. It won't be hard to put the fabric together for that. And I bought some of these notebooks. I'm going to actually write out instructions that'll probably be 3 or 4 pages long of how I do the cathedral window block, with all my little shortcuts in it. They're not really shortcuts, but easier ways to do things, which I was able to come up with because recently I also, like maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I was doing some English paper piecing quilting, which involves having little cards and the cloth around the cards, and then you sew them together by hand, and you come out with this very nicely um, beautifully connected patches that don't have any mistakes in them. They have all straight lines and they look beautiful. And it's very easy to do. But it's a whole different kind of quilting from Cathedral Window. So none of the people who were making videos about doing Cathedral Window seemed to know about the English paper piecing tricks. I applied that to my window and it became easy to make. So that's all I'm going to say. And I got to be careful not to put too much out there before so that one of these professional influencers grabs my idea before I can actually accomplish it. Although that's not likely to happen because if you're a professional influencer, you're probably doing other stuff and aren't paying any attention to me. I don't know if anyone's talking or not. Um, I don't even know what time it is. Oh, YouTube, you've got to leave the clock on the screen when we're streaming. It tells me how long I've been streaming, but it doesn't tell me what time it is. And I have an old-fashioned round clock right over there, but it periodically stops. 10:34 p.m. Oh, wait a minute. I can see the time if I look at the chat. Okay. But the chat keeps disappearing. YouTube made it so that it fades away. And I have to keep clicking it back. There's something about, Scarborough, Ontario. Okay, I'm on the Gulf Coast in Texas, so you're straight line due north of here. We're in the same time zone. But it's tropical weather down here, and you got yourself a lot of snow up there. Okay, this is the last one for ironing. See, just sitting here talking, look how many I did. Okay, step one is ironing your two edges onto your 10-inch squares, your large squares. There are large squares and small squares for this quilt. Most of the work is done on the large square. This one's crooked. There. Oh, so up in Ontario, Kerry says we have rain. Just starting back into snow. Had a green Christmas. Wow. The weather is crazy. Pure madness. Step two is sew the two ends. which you could do in about 5 minutes if you're using a sewing machine. But I'm just not into that right now. I do have a sewing machine. It's under the bed in a box, and I'm not digging it out. I live in tiny space, and I'm having fun adapting a lot of these activities to tiny space, because that's another thing I feel like I'm able to do, is help people figure out that you don't have to have an awful lot to do what you want to do. Sometimes you just have to be creative. Ouch. And stick yourself in the finger. Not good. Another thing I want to do this year, I've done it a few times, but I just never stuck to it, is doing my own canning. I don't have a garden, and I'm not going to put one back in. I have a few container planters with herbs in them, like garlic chives and stuff like that. But and I do have a space I could do as a garden if I wanted, but I don't feel like it. But you can still do a lot with canning just by buying fresh produce when it's in season. And I plan to do more of that. Hey, hello Sandra. How are you? I know you from one of the quilting channels, and I can't think of which one. Anyone, I don't know if you can put a link to a YouTube channel in chat, but you can put your channel name in a comment, and I don't know if you can do that while we're still live. You might have to wait and come back later, but if you can do it now, do it. Go ahead and let people find your channel. I'm thinking of doing something like a flea market stream. Tell me what y'all think of it. Where like I said, I'm going to be putting together some small kits. I'm not going to try anything big, because one of the things that scares me about selling kits is somebody's going to screw it up when they get it, and they're going to blame me. And I'm not going to know, did I actually pack the wrong number of pieces of cloth or not? But I think I can handle small kits. Oh, how can I, let me see how I can make you a moderator. Report, remove, add as moderator. Okay. Managing. Can do block words. Can review and remove. Okay, I'm going to make you a standard moderator. And let me see. I should have more than one. Oops. Tell me if you don't want to be a moderator. Hello, Lol Factory. I don't know if I should make you a moderator. You've got a scary YouTube name. But I think I'll make Angela a moderator. Okay. I've got two moderators now. Let me see. Who else? Well, I guess two is enough for now. What have you been up to, Lol Factory? Anything family friendly? Now the thing is, how can I add, maybe I'm not able to add people as guests because I've only been able to stream for about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. You had to hit a certain level with YouTube for them to say, okay, you can stream now. And I don't know if you have to hit another, now what's this? There's a dot here that I don't know what it is. Can you hear me? Diamond painting. That's neat. Oh, Sandra yeah, she put her channel in. Sandra, since you can do that, would you do me the favor of cruising around to some of the other people and putting their channels up too? Now, I can't find any ability to do a guest shot here. There's one thing I want to push, but I'm afraid I'll wreck the stream if I push it. But Ayualde. Aeioualde. Gangsta Granny. Charlie the Cat Guy. So, new faces coming in. Ashton Jury. Your name looks familiar, Ashton. But I'll shout you out, whoever you are, for the moment, until I find out if you're one of the because I know the trolls will be creeping in here. Oh, you're friends of Lol Factory. Uh-oh. Well, as long as you guys keep it clean. My son, huh? My son or mi cholo? Let me see. I'm going to push this button. If I blow up the stream, you all get in lifeboats and we'll reconnect on the island. Let me see. Oh, I just uploaded something from here as a short. But I still don't see anything that will let me add a guest. Now, here are some games we're supposed to be able to stream and play. Let me see. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe this button. AO says I was sexier 40 years ago. What happened? 30 years added on to 40? That's what happened? No, all this does is share it, which I don't want to do right now. No, I am not a model. Sweet and Sassy Glamour 312. Okay, bunch of people subbing. I don't know. It looks like I got some interesting characters coming into chat. What kind of food do I like? Well, actually, most of the food I grew up with is French cooking, and I didn't realize there was anything special about it until somebody identified some of the stuff that is just home cooking to me as being French cooking. Like making a roux with butter and flour before you make a soup or something, or a gravy. I would prefer burgers. Say it with, yeah, whole bunch of trolls in here. I hope you guys are all old enough to be on YouTube. I can't have burgers that much though because it messes with the digestion. I can have about 1 or 2 servings a week of beef. If I have more than that, I get very serious indigestion. Burgers from Costco. Well, you know what? I do everything my own home cooking. Um, okay. Now, do I want to do step 1 on all of these? Or I did step 1. Step 1 was the 2 hems. Step 2 is stitching the ends together. I think I'll do step 2 on a bunch of them. No, I won't. I'll go through all the steps. Sophie Mathers. I'm not that old. I'm 72. I hope to get a lot older. I hope to go for the full 100. That's what I think is the best way to go. Now, this is where the cathedral window quilt block gets interesting. Because you turn it, at this point, if you want to, you can pad it, but you do this. You turn it into a little poof. I need to get one of those overhead camera setups. I did have one, but it was a cheap camera. It was holding the phone camera, and it was a cheap thing, and it fell on my head when I was trying to use it, and I haven't gotten another one since. Now this is broken too. It's not turning on. Oh, it's on. Come on. Oh, Mayberry. I'm getting a whole bunch of... Oh, wait a minute. There's somebody. Okay. Oh, Sophie Mathers. How many steps is it? Oh, for this quilt, hems, end stitches, first fold, second fold, sew the tips together, put in the second square, sew the frame. Oh, and sew the blocks together. About 12 steps. It's a 12-step program. Oh, that's good. I can put that in my kit. Quilter's 12-step program. That's what it is. The boiled Pablo. Well, if I knew you, Pablo, I might do that. But I have no clue who you are. So the only two people I made moderator, I got some idea. Brokeback needs $100 to get home. Well, where are you trying to go? Okay, we don't need this. Remove. Da-dum, da-dum. And Brokeback, you're going to have to hitchhike. There's my help for you, Brokeback. Stick out your thumb and go. Um, okay. Now, I got the first level where I take this 10-inch square, turn it into about an 8-inch square. Now I'm going to fold them over again. This is where the magic starts to happen. You ever have one of those games that we used to play as kids at school where you folded a piece of paper and you would write everybody's name on it and you would go like this with the paper until two names came out together, and then you would say those two kids were loving each other? Innocent little childhood games we used to play when I was in school back in the Stone Age. Hola, Latina girl. Mexican food. Someone was asking me what kind of food I like. I love Italian food and Mexican food. And Chinese food. Actually, there's very little food that I don't love. Okay, there's one. Now, I've got to sew these points together. This is the one I just did, and this is then these two are going to be sewed together like that. So, where's my needle and thread? Hello, Ashton. Hey, everybody, go hit the thumbs up button. Make the algorithm love me. Tell me where y'all are from. I'm sitting here in Corpus Christi, Texas. Right on the shoreline. I just removed people. I didn't ban them or block them. I'll do that if it becomes necessary, but hopefully it won't. I think the whole troll thing is getting kind of old. It's like everyone was amazed when the internet was new, but now the internet is about as old as I am. It's not new anymore. It's no big deal. Okay, so I've got these. This one done. Now, see, these squares here, when you pull it won't really show on here. I don't think it'll really show. But you pull this back, and then you put this gold part in this part, and that's what makes the window. I mean, I'm using gold for it, but you can use anything. And this is one of those things that they really can't do in a factory. They can make a cathedral quilt on machines, but it doesn't look the same as the original. I just saw somebody talking about making a diamond painting of horses. Carrie Leonard says she's working on diamond painting of a horse. And someone else is knitting socks. Who said that? I have one pair of socks that I knitted, and I think it took me a year. Oh, come on. Sandra's knitting socks. I made a pair of socks with a round hoop. What do you call it? A knitting loom? I actually knitted with circular knitting needles. Then I got the hoop, and I never finished the ones on the hoop, although it does go faster, and with my arthritis it's easier. The ones I made, though, I wear them in cold weather because I used, I know you know the yarn. It's Lion brand. It's one of those ones that you get in a swirl of color. And it's partly wool and partly something else. It's a blend. It's a really nice yarn. And those are nice socks. Yeah, I'm starting to use hoop knitting because I really can't have, my fingers won't handle the knitting needles because of my arthritis. My hands cramp up. Although I can handle this, but it involves a lot less motion to sew than to knit. Yeah, and also I learned how to spin yarn. I did that, and I started weaving. I did make a couple of small things. I just have a little tabletop loom the kind the kids use in school, nothing fancy. I want to get a rigid heddle loom and actually do some serious weaving. But that's down the list on my budgets. I've got things like my cheese press before I get the rigid heddle loom. What I'd like to do is make some of those household slipper socks where you put the leather around the bottom. I just recently bought a really nice pair of sheepskin slippers. Let's see, are they right here? Let me look. Yeah, right here. Yeah. See these? These are made by Minnetonka, and it's real sheepskin. They feel so good on the feet. And I saw some, you can buy sheepskin. And I was thinking I should learn how to make moccasins. But actually, well, thank you for showing up, Sandra. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be on every day, but I might. I mean, I sit and sew every day, so it's no trouble to just reach over and turn on the camera. And we can all kind of be there for each other. I probably will be on in the evening, Central Time. If I do any tutorials, I'll do them offline and then upload them. And that means, of course, they'll show up under videos, but they won't show up under live streams. And I do have to go and clean up the troll videos that have messed up my channel. Dum 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 dum. It's too bad that we really can't play background music because you always have to worry about one of those automatic copyright strikes if you're playing music. I don't have anything with good quality volume anyway, because you have to have good quality on the speaker to have it picked up by a live stream. But even so, good night, Carrie. Thank you for showing up. Thank you, Sandra. Well, we've been on for an hour. Which tea? Hey, Risto, how are you? What? I don't know what you're asking about. Did I say something? Oh, this is coffee. Glad to see you, Risto. Mm. You know, I haven't gotten around to doing something I said I was going to do, Risto, because I just really haven't wanted to watch that guy's videos. And at this point I don't think it's worth it. It's just stepping into more troll stuff, and people are going to do what they do, you know? The world is going bonkers faster than ever. And I will say one thing, though. Now, other people who don't know what's going on here, Risto and I know each other from a totally different pocket of YouTube, where he was questioning. I got trolled by somebody that everyone thought was a upstanding member of the group, and I said he wasn't. And everyone else is like, "Oh, we've known him for a long time. He's a nice guy." But I left because the guy was trolling me with stuff from the other trolls. So I knew he was talking to the old trolls that were not part of that pocket. See, I don't want to get too far into it because then we'll be trigger trolled again. But anyway, I know Risto from that group. Risto had said, no, he seems like a nice guy. Then I had said, well, I will go over one of his videos with timestamps to show you each place where he's more than a little sus. To me. And I just, like I said, I just haven't really had my heart in doing it. And Risto, I will tell you one thing, though. I don't know if this would mean anything to you or not, because we come from different directions. Okay, full disclaimer here. If I talk about religious things, it's not because I think one religion is right and the others are wrong. But I was raised in a very religious Catholic, French Catholic enclave, actually. I mean, I was 12 years old before I knew they let Protestants into the country. That's how Catholic we were. So I am very much interested in all things spiritual, mythological, multidimensional. I take a very scientific view of Catholic mysticism. Oh, Nazarene. I've had a few good friends who were Nazarene, and I took care of a lady in hospice when I was working in hospice. I need to tell you about her. But first I want to finish the first thought, and then I'll go back to Jeannie, the lady I took care of back in the No, it wasn't the 1900s. It was the 2000s. It was around 2008. But anyway, back to that pocket. The pocket I'm talking about, for the benefit of those who don't know who Risto is or what we're talking about. It's a general discussion group where people from all walks of life, but mostly Christian-oriented, have some really interesting discussions. And there's some really interesting people in it. People like Jonathan Peugeot, who is a French-Canadian Orthodox Catholic. I don't know which Orthodox group he belongs to, because you have the Greek Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox. I think most of the Americans and French Canadians who are now converting to Orthodoxy, I think they're mostly going into Russian-oriented groups. Now, the Orthodox Church isn't like the Roman Catholic Church, because we have that one individual, the Pope. Ugh. And hey, I want to tell you something. I do not like the present Pope, but I had to laugh when I realized we got us a Cajun Pope. Think about that. We got us a Cajun Pope. Pope Leo is an American Cajun. That's the only good thing I have to say about him. Anyway, so what I was going to say to you, Risto, was I still get notifications from Paul Vanderklay's Substack. And I need to turn, Substack is weird. It's not easy to unsubscribe. They put you through 3 or 4 loops. And I thought every time I think I unsubscribed, it comes back. But I went and looked at one of his articles recently, one of the ones in the last week or so. He is arguing and you know how Paul Vanderklay is, okay? And anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, you can put Paul Vanderklay into YouTube search. He's a very prolific publisher, YouTube channel guy. He's a pastor. He's a really weird guy. He's a pastor of a Calvinist Christian church in California, but he's extremely left-wing liberal, and his wife is a teacher in the Rudolf Steiner system. Now, a lot of people don't see anything wrong with, and frankly, there's a great deal about the Rudolf Steiner Waldorf school system that I like, but there's a lot of other stuff about Steiner's ideas that are really kind of weird. But anyway, I was looking at this Substack article, Risto. He's arguing in this article that we should not be distinguishing between the Old and New Testaments. That is very scary. But the thing about putting the Old Testament on an equal footing with the New Testament from a Christian point of view is that, well, I don't want to get into all the theology of it because I'm really not a scholar, but I wish I could remember the title of the article, but it's his most, I think it's his most recent Substack article. If not, it's only 1 or 2 behind. And the Christians in the United States who are pushing the Old Testament to bring it up to equal and even superior to the New Testament, because the Jews say the Old Testament is scripture and they treat the New Testament like the Book of Mormon, interesting religious fiction. Fan fiction, you might say, of the Bible. And what Paul Vanderklay is doing is what the Christian Identity Sovereign Citizen movement does. Putting the Judaic Hebrew praise and reliance on the Old Testament over the New Testament. And that right there, now I don't know, it makes me wonder if all the Calvinists actually have that in their theology. Now, as Catholics, we do respect the Old Testament. We use it we have Bible every day in our religion, at Mass. When I went to parochial school, we had Bible interlaced through all our subjects. Actual Bible. And when you read the Catholic versions of the Bible, they're no different from the King James. The major difference between King James Bible that was printed in 1611 and the Catholic official Bible was that the Protestants decided there were half a dozen or so books that they didn't like. But the books that they kept are the same. And what a lot of modern Protestants don't understand is the Catholics never really put all books of the Bible at the same level. So the books that were taken out were books that we also were taught in school were not really that holy. They were history. They were part of interesting stories that we should know about. because they were part of our Christian heritage going back to the Old Testament. And so really it wasn't that big of a deal as to whether they stay or go. But Paul Vanderklay's decision to bring the Old Testament forward, what's scary about it in modern terms is that the Old Testament is where you see the absolute support for genocidal tribal warfare. In the Old Testament, the Israelites were 3 or 4 different times, at least, told to totally wipe out another population, man, woman, child, even killed off the cattle and pets and animals in at least one instance. Told to kill off all the converts and people from the Canaanites who had intermarried, so they were told to kill off their own relatives if they came in as immigrants from the Canaanite background. That's the Old Testament. And we as Catholics were always taught that the Old Testament was basically history. And Jesus taught us how to move beyond that level of living. And I think most American Christians, although they may be Protestant, Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever, most people, if you ask them to explain the Old and New Testaments, they will say that, no, we're not supposed to be doing all that bloodthirsty, warlike stuff from the Old Testament. That's just an account of what happened. And Jesus does not support that. And he directly addresses it in his teaching. He gives us the tools to move beyond that level of civilization and become truly civilized. Well, I should say that level of savagery in order to become truly civilized. And it scares me when somebody in Paul Vanderklay's position, as he's a bricks and mortar pastor with a real church, and he says some interesting things. He has an article about dreaming. I think it's separate from that one about the Old Testament. His article about dreaming is very interesting. But he also speaks about personal experiences and so on. So you get a good view of his church. If you go to Paul Vanderklay Substack, you can read those articles. They're both very recent. But the thing about pushing the Old Testament, there is a group. Somebody mentioned, I think it was you, Risto, said you thought he probably voted for Trump. I voted for Trump. But I voted for Trump on a limited basis of certain things I knew he would do, I think needed to be done, and he's doing them. But there are other things he's doing that, God help us. But I know that it would be worse if the Democrats were there. So, yeah, the thing about Calvinism, it's weirdly materialistic. In fact, that's one of the things most American Protestants are highly suspicious of Catholics, because we're comfortable with mysticism. In fact, one of the things we learn as Catholics from the nuns, and they were very strict about what they taught us, was that it's actually a sin to try to solve a mystery. The mysteries being things like the Holy Eucharist. How does the bread and wine become body and blood? We're not supposed to try to figure that out. So the Catholic Church admits that that is a completely irrational belief, but also says, don't try to figure it out. Don't insist that it be answered. And what that idea of solving a mystery being a sin does is it makes you comfortable admitting that there are some things we're just never going to figure out. And if you believe, as most Protestants seem to believe, that you do have to have an answer for every question, you do have to solve all the mysteries. The problem with that approach is your own ego, your own brain becomes the judge and jury of all that is true and real. RistoTube's asking if I ever attended an Orthodox church. I went to a Greek Orthodox wedding. Some friends of mine, the groom was an Anglo-Protestant, and the bride was from a very, very traditional Greek family. I think her parents were recent immigrants. She grew up here. That was amazing. And I've always enjoyed Orthodox art. As I was saying before, Jonathan Pacho was in this group with RistoTube. And he's an icon carver. He's a French-Canadian artist who found his calling carving holy icons. And speaking of knowing, I knew Greek people, that we had a lot of Greek immigrants in my town when I was a kid. But I also worked for a Greek family in Boston who ran a flower shop. And I was frequently having to do the flowers around the icons because they had frequent saints' festivals. And they would take the icon of the saint and surround it with live flowers and carry it in a procession. And so one of my jobs in this little Greek flower shop was to decorate the icons, and I had to learn about how the flowers, which ones were the right ones to use and all that. I think the roughest thing, Risto, for an evangelical becoming Orthodox is probably the shift from having to explain everything, having an answer for everything, and being more, because the Orthodox are even more mystical than the Roman Catholics. Partly, I think, because the Russian Orthodox particularly had to hide under communism. They had to go completely underground. The Greek Orthodox had more of a open continuance after World War II. They did occasionally have communist leadership that outlawed religion, but it never stuck as hard as it did in Russia. So when you have to go, basically the Orthodox Church became completely occult because of having to be completely secret. I think that tends to strengthen the tendency for mysticism in a situation like that. And probably one of the problems, one of the biggest downfalls of the Roman Catholic Church is that we have mingled with the modern world so freely that we've become thoroughly, our church as an organization has become thoroughly corrupt, but our faith as a tradition, I believe, is still very strong. What we were saying before about Old Testament and Calvinism, I think the key is the materialist. The Old Testament is highly materialist, almost atheistic, frankly, because a lot of the Jews who are, like, they'll say they're ethnic Jews and they keep all the holidays because that's how you be Jewish. But when it comes to questions about God, it's not clear that they believe in God as a supreme, spiritual, supreme being the way Christians do, or even the way Islam does. There's a lot of room for atheism in Orthodox Jewishness. And I think the key to that and Calvinism is that Calvinism is extremely materialistic. The way you show that you are a good person is that you have material wealth. The Calvinists really believe that poverty is a sign of sinful nature, which is kind of difficult when you consider that people are born into either wealth or poverty. When you're born, your parents are either wealthy or poor or somewhere in the middle. You don't have anything to say about it. So it can't be a question that you committed a sin and that's why you're poor. Even though, and another thing, okay, you say, well, poor people for the most part, they're the ones that are getting drunk and getting into car accidents and doing stupid stuff in the street. Well, how many scandals have been wealthy people doing the same stuff, getting arrested, and suddenly they walk out of the courtroom scot-free because the judge is their cousin, which can happen among the poor too down here in the South. It isn't how much money you have so much as who your kinfolk are. But Calvinism and Judaism are highly materialistic. In fact, that's why, if you think about it, if you get into all the occult stuff, which, if you notice, go into the great and glorious land of Utopia, the Christian groups that Trump's people are highly influenced by are the sovereign citizen Christian identity, which are Judaic Christians. They are together with the Third Temple cult, which is a Jewish cult that Netanyahu belongs to. Put Netanyahu, comma, Third Temple. Go into Google or DuckDuckGo or any other search engine. Do that. Hit images. You will see a series of photographs of Netanyahu and Trump's Secretary of State in his first term, a guy named Pompeo, who is one of the political Christians, in photo opportunities with the Third Temple Jewish cult that is working very hard to cause World War III. Now, the reason they're doing that is they believe, and it's scary to think that Netanyahu seems to be part of this belief. I look at Trump and he annoys me. He doesn't scare me, but he annoys me because he obviously doesn't care. Hey, those guys got me votes. Great. I don't see him as being religiously committed to the insanity of the Third Temple cult. Netanyahu, on the other hand, has made statements that show he's highly conscious that this is an apocalyptic doomsday cult that believes that it is the job of the human race to make things so bad that Jesus has to return. Now, if you think about that, what you're doing, if you have that belief system, that you want Jesus to come back, and of course most of us Christians have, yeah, we all want Jesus to come back, but if you believe that anything you do, or you get other people to do with you, such as have a war, is going to force Jesus to come back, you are basically trying to conjure a spirit. God does not answer to human beings. We don't conjure God. That's one of the key issues, disputes between Jews and Christians, particularly Catholics, is that we state openly, Trinitarians state openly, that Jesus is God. And we have this complicated thing about, well, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, they're all one God, three different natures, but one being. Okay, and that's, I think that's actually an unconscious explanation of quantum physics, but we won't go there. But what they're doing when they do the doomsday stuff is they're trying to force God's hand, which means the only spiritual being that can be forced to do anything by a human being is one that is below us. Satan and his minions, the devil and all his demons, are below humanity. That was one of the key elements of the Great Rebellion, in which a third of the angels are said in the Bible to have been cast to the earth, cast out of heaven for rebelling. One of the reasons they rebelled was they were told that humanity was going to move above the angels in the religious hierarchy. The spiritual hierarchy. Now, we could have all kinds of theological arguments about that. Again, I'm no scholar. I don't want to go tip to toe with anybody. But if you think about the logic of the belief system, if you believe that you are supposed to force God's hand, then you believe that God is a demon. And there's some very interesting stuff about Yahweh of the Old Testament actually not being God the Creator. And there's interesting arguments as to who Jesus really was talking about when he referred to God the Father. Was he talking about the Yahweh that Moses talked about? That's a very deep rabbit hole right there. Let me go look at chat and see. I still have 5 people here, so that's good. Probably just fell asleep at your keyboards. All right. Risto says he likes the Jews. I don't think you can classify the Jews as one group, really, any more than you can classify Christians as one group, because there's so many variations on the theme. But this group that I'm talking about with Netanyahu, that's not most Jews. That's an actual little cult that is inside. Just like we have these weird Christian cults. I mean, people believe all kinds of weird stuff, and, you know. But it's scary when somebody in powerful political position is actively involved in something like that. And I tend to overthink it, I guess. But I wish the best to all the people around Paul. And I often wonder, does Paul Vanderklay really know what he's doing? Or is he just so busy chasing YouTube fame that he hasn't really thought it through? And whatever, we'll all figure it out or get told the answers when we get to the other side. Yeah, I voted for Trump because the border was the primary, and also dismantling the corruption that has turned our schools into surgical mutilation of our children. Just dismantling most of government. And people think what he's doing is ideological. And then they get confused, because if you really look at Trump, he plays both sides of the field. And then people say, oh, well, that means he's a trickster and da-da-da-da. No, actually, it's because people don't understand what's really going on. Technology is, the government has to be dismantled so that this new technology of cyber management of our laws and systems can be put in place. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. But it's what's happening. And it might be an inevitable thing. I don't know. I mean, nothing, at some level, nothing is inevitable, but it seems to be one of those things that we figured out how stupid technology can be a little bit too late to do anything about it. Oh, yeah, the Nazarene story. Okay, so this little hospice was a family run household in which, and Texas has a law that families can set up private care for their elders. And what had happened was my boss had to take care of her mother who had Alzheimer's. And in the course of taking care of her until she passed away, she got to know the whole medical system, and all the medical people got to know her and knew that she was really good with taking care. She knew how to take care of an Alzheimer's patient. So when she faced time alone after her mother passed and didn't know what she was going to do with herself, because for years she had dedicated herself to caring for her mother, they were both elderly at that point, they said, why don't you take in some people? And under Texas law, families can place their elders in a private home as long as they're getting licensed nursing care from visiting nurses from outside, just the same as if they simply lived in their own apartment, except that they're roommates with my boss, the owner of the house, being in charge. And what she did was she set it up so that she had 2 or 3 people, myself one of them, basically live-in help. And so it was run like a family, like we were all there as family. I was primarily in charge of cooking. We all did the cleaning, just like in a family. And it was really lovely. While I was there, we had 2 ladies who were taken care of. And the Nazarene was this tiny little woman. She had shrunk down in size, which happens to people when they get older. And she was tiny, and she was pretty much limited to her bed. By the time I started working there, she didn't really talk to a lot of people, but it was mostly by choice. She just, pretty much stayed to herself. Her family visited frequently, and she talked to them. And a friend of mine came in who was a retired RN. Did she stay there? She stayed there overnight, like living part of the time, and then was off on her own other times. So it was basically the 2 of us. And as I say, this was a hospice, so our job was simply to make life as comfortable as possible until the person passes on, which can sometimes mean years. I think I was there about a year. And one day I woke up, and as usual, I, first one awake, went to the kitchen to start getting breakfast ready. And I went by, and Jean's door was open, which it usually was, so that we could hear anything. I didn't really notice anything. And I'm in the kitchen, and I open the fridge, and I'm leaning down, and I pick up one egg, and I'm thinking about the 2 of them and which dietary things I had to prepare. And I started to reach in for another egg. And I swear, somebody touched me on my arm and said, "You don't need an egg for Jeannie today." And eggs was one of the few things Jean could enjoy eating, because she had all kinds of throat issues, and there were very few foods she could thoroughly enjoy, and she loved her eggs. And it was almost a voice. It said clearly, you only need one egg. Jeannie doesn't need an egg today. And that was it. But it was like, went so deep that I put the egg I had in my hand back, and I went over to Jean's room, and she had gone. She had passed during the night. Now, further story. As I say, she was Nazarene. Her family were very devout Nazarenes. In fact, when they visited, there was usually prayer time and singing, and a lot of singing. I think Nazarenes are one of those groups that has only a cappella. And her daughter or her sister, I think it was her younger sister, no, it was her daughter, said to me that, at what time do you think she passed? And they told me that she had been dead about 15 minutes when I had gone in and looked. And so it was right there at that moment, possibly, just minutes before I felt that touch. I'm still getting chills right now. You could almost see goosebumps as I talk about it. And her daughter said to me, at exactly that time, she woke up like that from a deep sleep, and she turned and she saw the page of her hymnal just go like that. And she said there was no breeze in the room, but she saw the page turn, and she sat up and looked, because it was, the sun was just coming up at that point, so there was light in the room. And it was Jean's favorite hymn. The page had turned to Jean's favorite hymn. And she was, and I want to cry. I mean, she was saying goodbye to us. And, yeah. That was really amazing. And the Nazarenes that I've known have been very, very faithful people, very good people. They get hit with a lot of cult nonsense because they live apart from others. I don't know which hymn it was. I just know that her daughter told me it was her favorite. I didn't particularly feel welcome to participate with them in prayer because, being Catholic, you always have to be careful around certain groups in the South. This is the Bible Belt. And you don't want to offend them. And so I kept my distance. But it was something in the Nazarene hymnal. And she did sing beautifully. I mean, she didn't speak hardly at all. I remember them singing that hymn, but I don't know if that's the one it was. He said that let me pull the chat up again. I wish that YouTube would let us click a statement onto the screen. Whoops. Oh, shit. Damn it. I just killed the chat. Ah. Come on. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to bring it back. There. Okay, we're back. Good. All the messages are here. I didn't kill the chat. Oh, YouTube, you've got to change how you do chat. Now, my friend, the RN that works there, she was from a church that only sang a cappella, wouldn't even allow any instruments. And they were very similar to the Nazarenes. It was a black church. I think it was Church of Christ. I think that was the name of it. Oh, she had some stories to tell. Just about life in East Texas in the black. There's whole parts of East Texas that are all owned by black people who are the descendants of freed slaves who had bought the land before the Civil War. There was a section all along the Louisiana border where once, if you were a slave on a plantation somewhere in the United States and you got your freedom, you bought it or somehow, your master decided to let you go, they would go to this part of Texas and buy land and just set up their own communities. And my friend grew up in one of those communities. And there's a whole, what do you call what did they call it? A breakaway civilization? There's a whole civilization in East Texas that if you go there, you may as well be in a total another country. Because, as I say, they go back to when black folks were still in slavery, but yet they had bought their freedom and they interacted and they preserved their land ownership all the way through. I mean, I think today it might be harder than it ever was on them because we've got people coming into Texas grabbing land right and left. But when I first moved to Texas, I saw a group from there on the Juneteenth parade, and it was wonderful. Because the way they keep white folks out of that part of the country, and Texas is big, so that part of East Texas is as big as a whole state. And the way they keep white folks out is simply don't pave the roads. So it looks like it's old back country, third world, etc. Except that they're all they're not all very wealthy, but they have their own middle class wealth, and they work in the space program, they work in the oil rigs all through Louisiana bayous, and they work in all the private prisons. It's a whole system of private contract prisons in western Louisiana and eastern Texas that are mostly staffed by this population of people. But as I say, they kept the roads. A lot of the roads and everything were kept unpaved and everything. And she's talking about, she's my age, so she grew up, she was a little bit younger, grew up in the 60s and 70s, and was still backcountry. And they wouldn't sell land to white folks. That's how they kept their community. And yeah, she had the way they could ride. I never saw people so at one with their horses. These guys came in to be on parade, and it was really kind of funny. I was living in Brenham, Texas, which is a weird little place. And I had joined the local art co-op, and I had noticed on the duty roster, we each had to volunteer to spend a day watching the gallery. Nobody signed up for June 19th. I had no clue I didn't know June 19th was anything. I just saw an empty spot on the roster, so I signed up. And they said, "You're going to watch the gallery on June 19th?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" And they said, "Okay," and gave me the keys. I didn't think nothing of it. So our little side street where the gallery was where where that group were set up. And as the parade went by on the main street, that was where they went forward to join us. So I got to see them all on their horses and just doing everything. And they were dressed country style, bareback. They were all bareback. They didn't have saddles. And my daughter rode. And I used to watch horseback riding. I never really did much riding myself. But yeah, I can appreciate a good rider. And yeah, it was something. Yeah, so I was watching the gallery and I couldn't believe it. It's like, and somebody called from the committee of fine white folks that ran the art co-op and like, how's everything there? And they figured that I was like them. They figured that as soon as I saw all these black people, I was going to freak out. It was like, I was like, oh, neat. And I was out there sketching. I was sketching the horses and sketching everyone. And they came over and they said, oh, is the gallery open? And I said, yeah, sure, come in. Then I found out all the white businesses in Brenham shut down on Juneteenth. They would not stay open for Juneteenth. And there was nothing threatening. This was back in 2000. Yeah, it was my first year in Texas. I came here right at the turn of the century. So there was just as much crazy politics going on in the world as there is today. But there was never any threatening, aggressive nastiness coming at all out of that black community. They were just regular people like everyone else. But so the whites that ran the gallery figured I was going to be freaked out. And I was like, so I said, oh no. They were coming in and admiring the work, and I was telling them all about the programs that we had and inviting them to sign up for classes. It's just, the rest of the art co-op freaked out. Absolutely freaked out because Brenham was a Jim Crow town, total Jim Crow. And I was only beginning to figure it out because I didn't fully recognize the shuck and jive routine. And I didn't fully recognize that there was still a lot of shuck and jive going on because of Jim Crow in Brenham. And I figured I found out. So the rest of the co-op freaked out. And at the next meeting, they just openly said to me, didn't you know why nobody opens on Juneteenth? And I said, no, why? And they said, because of the Juneteenth. I was like, what's Juneteenth? Juneteenth is a very peculiar Texas holiday, which has nothing to do with any place outside of Texas, because what had happened historically, the Emancipation Proclamation was announced by Abraham Lincoln, right? All the slaves were free. Not all of them, though. Louisiana slaves were not free under the Emancipation Proclamation because Louisiana had surrendered. Only the slaves in the southern states that were still at war against Washington, against the Union, were freed. People don't realize that. Louisiana slaves were not freed. But Texas slaves were freed because Texas was still at war with the Union. So the fine white people who run Texas figured, well, because there was no internet in those days. There wasn't even any telephones. So they figured, well, if we don't tell them that there's been an Emancipation Proclamation, they'll never find out. Duh. Right? Okay. Brilliant white Texan guy. So Texas did not tell the black folks they were free. Of course, word got to them from black folks from other places. It's like, hey, you damn fools, you're not slaves anymore. And the word got out on June 19th. And so, thus became the holiday of Juneteenth, which is basically Texas black folks' Independence Day, which doesn't exist anywhere else because everywhere else they knew what was going on. Anyway, at that meeting, they were in really like, they didn't know how to politely tell me I was going against the color bar without admitting there was a color bar, because you have this very complicated social etiquette in the South in which nobody admits the reality. So they had to somehow, have their meeting. And this one lady just stood up and said, "Oh, they were trying to figure out how they could ask me to leave the co-op without openly stating what they were." And this one lady, she says, "She hasn't lived here very long. She's a northerner. She doesn't know." And I'm like, "I don't know what? Duh." Nothing worse than a Yankee Asperger's person. But that was wonderful. I mean, that was a wonderful experience. And my friend, Marion, that was working at the hospice with me, oh, she had story after story. And, she loved history. We spent a lot of time. We were great friends for a while. And, yeah. Anyway, what's happening in chat? I'm going to be closing down pretty soon because I'm getting tired. Risto, it wasn't a single town. It's all through East Texas. There are these areas up around Tyler and Lovelady, Texas, northeast of Houston, all along the Louisiana border. I've got other stories to tell too, but I'm gonna close this down and tell some other interesting stories that Marion told me. And her mother was a quilter too. She said when her mother died, she didn't even know. I guess she knew she quilted, but it was like, yeah, a quilt here and a quilt there. But she said she was so surprised after her mother died, she opened this one drawer and it was full of unquilted tops that were waiting for the padding and everything to be put on them. Every quilter's got a drawer like that. I never saw any pictures of her mother's quilts, though. I wish I did. I'd be interested to see what they were like. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm going to close down. I might be on again tomorrow. I don't know. Tomorrow's Sunday. I don't go anywhere on Sundays because the bus schedule is ridiculous on Sunday. You got to wait about 2 hours for a connection. So I stay home. So, well, God bless some, have mercy on some, and to hell with the rest. Just ignore them, and you get to pick which group you're in. Denise Matteau, over and out.